working with patients to assess and evaluate the concept of DCTs in a pan-European setting with Tanja and Bart. Oh, did I say it wrong? No, different person. Oh, Tanja, Bart, and Martin? Okay, come on down, Martin. Come on up. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I think we shall take her in the middle.
Sorry?
Shall we take her in the middle? I think that's the best. Maartje in the middle, in the center. So, do you want to start? Hand it over to me and to Maartje then.
So, good morning, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being with us here in this morning session. We today are here on behalf of the Trials at Home Consortium, and the Trials at Home Consortium is a public-private consortium, IMI, and we do everything clinical trials, I would say. We look at legal, we look at ethics, we look at best practices that have already been done, but also as part of our consortium, we're setting up a big trial, actually comparing DCTs to other trial approaches. And that's also why we're here today, to tell you a part about that trial. The title of our presentation is Working with Patients to Assess and Evaluate the Concept of DCTs in a Pan-European Setting. My name is Bart Lagerwaard. I work at the University Medical Center in Utrecht. And as part of my work there, I work at the Trials at Home Consortium. And what motivates me to work in this consortium is, as my job, I would like to use innovative technologies to improve the health of people. And, well, DCTs are essentially technology-enabled trials to potentially alleviate some of the challenges that clinical trials face. And, well, if we can potentially alleviate some of those challenges, we will have better trials and eventually better health. And that's why we put so much effort into this. I'm not here alone today. We're actually having a group on stage.
Thanks so much, Bart. So my name is Tanja Keiper. I'm working for MERCK KGaA in Darmstadt. And I was drawn into this overall initiative of decentralized clinical trials at IMI because I am a very passionate, patient-centered person. So I would really love to have a standard procedure where patients are being involved in drug development, to develop drugs for patients together with patients. But in addition to this, I also would like to provide everybody who wants to participate in a trial actually the chance to participate in one, regardless of where I'm located, whether I'm close to a clinical trial site or whether I'm sitting somewhere where the nearest clinic is 100 miles away or kilometers away. And we are really looking into this concept, into the decentralized clinical trial approach, to provide at least some portions of, innovative technologies to bring the study to the patient, instead bringing the patients to the clinical trial site. And this is where I think the IMI activity can really make a difference, or at least bring us data that help us to develop future differentiated clinical trial designs. And from the patient perspective, we do have Maartje.
Hello everyone, I am Maartje Roskams and I work at IDF Europe, which is International Diabetes Federation, as a youth and project coordinator. And as a person living with diabetes myself, IDF Europe is really an organization close to my heart, because we are an umbrella organization which represents 70 national diabetes associations in 44 countries across Europe. So this representation makes us really a diverse and multicultural organization. And with a huge drive to represent both people living with diabetes and also healthcare professionals. And I'm very passionate also to increase the voice of people living with type 2 diabetes. So therefore, I'm really happy to be a coordinator at IDF Europe for Trials at Home. And at Trials at Home, obviously, our role as IDF Europe is to represent the patient voice, as I mentioned before, but also through a panel of experts, we would like to make sure or ensure that their experiences are heard.
So the first part of our presentation, we will tell you a little bit about the trial that we're setting up, the RADIAL trial. And actually, what this trial is a decentralized proof of concept study. So I think there may be a lot of promises and a lot of ideas about DCTs, but as scientists we work with data, and that's why we are setting up this trial to actually compare these trial approaches. So actually what the aim is of our trial is to assess the scientific and operational quality of a fully decentralized and hybrid trial approach. And actually in that aim we sort of have two sub-aims or two things that we are considering. First of all, we would like to evaluate the acceptability of DCTs. So essentially, if we were to do all the trials now that we're doing conventional, we would move them to a DCT design. Can we actually safely, responsibly do this? Do we have acceptable safety output, data quality, and maybe the similar or acceptable medical endpoints that we're measuring? But also, of course, there are some potential benefits, or maybe some benefits that we think about DCTs, and we would also like to measure that in our study. So this could be retention, recruitment, diversity, cost, and also the main topic of today, satisfaction, both of the sites and of the patient. So how we're going to do this? Well, we're setting up a pan-European trial. And it has two different parts with in total 3 different arms. I will get back to those arms in a little bit. But essentially what we're doing is we're doing a real trial. We're doing a trial in people living with diabetes, switching their basal insulin to another basal insulin. And everybody will actually do this trial. Everybody will be in the intervention group. But the difference is that the way that the participants do the trial is different. So if you look at this figure here, you can see that we have 2 parts of the study. We have the part B, which is a completely decentralized arm. And we have a part A, which is actually a site-based part with 2 different arms. A conventional and a hybrid. So the remote arm is completely decentralized. I will go a bit more in detail in a little bit. So it has a decentralized recruitment and also a completely decentralized follow-up period with no physical interactions or no site visits. So it's a unicorn, as it was just described. And in the conventional arm and in the part A, so in the conventional and the hybrid arm, we have a site-based screening, site-based recruitment, site-based screening, and then for the conventional we have a conventional follow-up that's actually modeled after current clinical trial practice. And in the hybrid arm we have then a decentralized follow-up of the study. So just to show you a few highlights of how that would look in the study. So if you would define the study in 3 different phases, in all those phases the trial or the participants in each trial arm will experience the trial differently. So if you look at the screening period, as I just said, part A is completely site-based, so the participants are recruited via site, and also all the screening will be done at site. Whereas in the remote arm, the screening is done via online screening or other decentralized screening methods. And all the screening materials will be sent to the participant to either do themselves or guided via telemedicine visits. And then if you look at the treatment period in the conventional arm, there's manual collecting of the dosing and timing of the IMP. However, we have an app, I think that's quite common already in clinical trial practice, where they can, for example, report some EPROs or also, for example, glucose measurements. But in the hybrid and the remote arm, the drugs will be shipped to the participant using direct-to-patient shipment. All the collection will be done of the dosing and timing of the IMP using a wearable, actually a wearable on the insulin pen. And all safety reporting will also be done in the study app at any time, at any occurrence that they, that's the idea, at occurrence that they report it. And the visits are obviously the most the most different. So in a conventional arm, everything takes place at the clinical site, for example, including the blood sample collection. Whereas in the hybrid arm, we bring the site to the participant, let's say. So we have home nurse visits, and there he or she can do the blood sample collection at home. Whereas in the remote arm, again, we send all the materials for the visits to the participant, and they can collect or do all the procedures themselves at home. So we have a lot of endpoints of KPIs, as we say, to be compared between these three trial approaches. But one, of course, that we are highlighting today is we want to compare the site staff and participant satisfaction regarding their experience with the operational approach. And that will be the focus of the next part of the presentation.
So when we are talking about co-creation and patient engagement, at IDF Europe we really like to use the hashtag nothing about us without us, which means that we truly believe that the patient should be in the center of every clinical study or at any medicine development or device development and so on. And we do not really, in the diabetes community, we do not really see ourselves as patients, but more as people living with diabetes, which means that we are way much more than only the disease itself. And more will follow about that in the next slides. So about co-creation, even before the protocol was set up, there was already input asked by the diabetes community, by the patient expert panel, and by lay patient consultations, and also do several surveys. And this was really key to understand the life of people living with type 2 diabetes and also what would attract them to join a study. It's also vital, even in the beginning, but also by patient input, to identify potential hurdles in patient recruitment, but also adherence, and also obviously the retention of patients in clinical trials. And one of the examples is that one of our PEP members mentioned that people living with diabetes are so much more than only clinical outcomes and numbers. So therefore, the quality of life survey was initiated in before the protocol to really assess what the needs and experiences are, and also the preferences of people living with diabetes to join a clinical trial. So more specifically about the patient expert panel, it is composed of 8 diabetes representatives across Europe, also with different genders and nationalities. They do this on a voluntary basis and in an advisory capacity. So they are also involved in several work packages, but also within the team of the PEP members, they exchange information and they also give direct input into working groups to really be on the spot and immediately feedback on everything that is important and that concerns patient engagement, but also language and many other topics. So about co-creation, you can really see on this aspect that the PEP members, the patients, are really represented in all aspects of the study. So already from the ideation, that was really the beginning of the PEP's journey to give input about not necessarily only unmet needs, but also preferences and things that are important for them to go further in developing the protocol. And really specifically about the protocol, there was the burden, value, and safety assessed by the PEP to make sure that we really have an inclusive protocol that helps us in having a diverse population to attract the study to. And same goes for the ICF, which is the e-consent. And the biggest role there for the PEP was to really look at language, so make sure that there is no discriminating language in the ICF. In general, visuals were overviewed, and also several other things, and the flow in general. And in terms of recruitment, the PEP really has a vital role in communication and the messaging framework to make sure that there is also an inclusive and diverse population that will join the study, and again focusing on language and really assessing their experiences with diabetes and how that could affect other people living with diabetes. And about engagement, this is what we experience as, I think, the most challenging part. And the PEP has a huge influence on trying to assess how we can engage with a community that is very diverse and not always eager to talk about their disease due to discrimination about type 2 diabetes and many other factors that go with it. So that was my part, and I will give the floor to Tanja.
Thank you so much, Maartje. And again, it is not patients that are participating in RADIAL, our study, but it's people living with type 2 diabetes. That was actually something that was really relevant for me when I interacted with the patient expert panel on that. So what we wanted actually to, or one of the things that we would like to assess through RADIAL, through our study, is to see whether a certain degree of decentralization or remoteness in a study has an effect on our patients and our participants in the study. So whether we do have, in regards to recruitment, retention, and also the data quality, an effect that we can link back to the technologies or the degree of decentralization that we had integrated in our trials. And when we are looking at the recruitment rate, actually, one of the measuring things that are, for everybody who is conducting clinical trials, one of the most important things to look into, we really would like to understand whether our different techniques through which we will be searching and recruiting patients into our study will have an effect, right? So firstly, Bart already mentioned that we have in part A the hybrid and conventional arm, which means that we will have 300 participants being recruited through the normal, standard, conventional recruitment strategies, which are referrals, databases, etc. And they will go into this part A. And we will compare the recruitment rate, of course, with part B, which is our remote arm. And the participants for the remote arm will be recruited through a digital patient recruitment strategy. We have learned a little bit and heard a little bit about digital patient recruitment already in this morning. And the funny thing, or not the funny, the very interesting thing for our remote arm actually is that we will not only measure or compare the conventional recruitment strategy with the digital recruitment strategies, but that we have also within the recruitment strategy itself a comparison. So we will have a fully remote digital recruitment strategy using media outreach, media campaigns, social media campaigns, and compare this with a mixed model where we will also reach out to patients digitally, but with a different, strategy, which is more site-based. So this will in itself also give us an understanding whether certain degrees of decentralized activities will have an effect and influence on the recruitment activity and recruitment speed, diversity, and of course the recruitment rate itself. And this is a little bit how the digital patient recruitment strategy and the social media campaign looks like. We do work with social media ads, networks, and also registries. We are setting up the landing page, which is the radio.eu landing page, which is coupled with a pre-screener, and the pre-screener will then lead us to the next step, which will be in interaction with the site for further recruitment activities. So this is how the digital recruitment strategy looks like. And for the conventional arm, I already mentioned that we are doing the standard activities for recruitment. When we are looking at the retention rate, I think that we are always talking about patient engagement in a clinical trial, which hopefully leads to a better retention. But what does patient engagement actually mean? Is it the direct interaction on site with a human being? Is it, in general, the interaction with a human being? Or is it just, let's say, a participation in a study where the burden and the hurdle for me to join the study is as low as possible? And so we tried to show you here the differentiation between the three arms. So the conventional arm, where we have 7 personal interactions, the hybrid arm, where it is only 2 and 5 digital interactions, and the remote arm with 2 and 5 digital interactions. But there is a different, how to say, interactivity between hybrid and remote, even though the personal interaction numbers, the counts during the study, is the same. So in the hybrid arm, we have a home nurse coming to you and interacting with you, whereas in the remote arm, we will have a telehealth medicine contact. So it is in itself also the opportunity for us to see whether this, how to say, missing interaction with a human being, with a patient, with a nurse or a doctor, is either helping someone to stay in the study as a pro for the retention, or is it more hindering because the patient needs to travel to the site? And often we have heard from patients in the past that they do not want to have too many sites visit during the study because they lose too much time and it is not to be integrated in their daily lives. So with that approach, we will be able to really see the differences between the three arms and whether there is a certain appetite in a certain patient population as well, because we will try to also see the level of diversity of a population that we had recruited into these three arms to really directly make a link to the certain behavior or preferences. So this will be actually very interesting. And in addition, for not only interesting for this specific study, but of course for our learnings to design future studies and to see what kind of activities might be useful for either this patient population or other patient populations as well. And in addition, this is just to show you the difference of the degree of decentralization between the three arms. And in addition to these measurements, we have also integrated the study participant feedback questionnaire that Sebastian had explained earlier, the Transcelerate approach, where we are actually asking the study participants for their feedback on the trial when they are in the trial. We had worked with patients or people living with type 2 diabetes on the overall concept of the study and its design, but we are now asking the study participants for their, how to say, experience while they are in the study. And this will give us a direct understanding on how this is achieved and perceived by the patients, well, not patients, people living with type 2 diabetes, apologies for that. And this is it from our end. One thing that we wanted to bring to you again is the diversity aspect of our study. And maybe Bart, do you want to share a little bit your thoughts on that again?
I think it might be a good one to have over coffee over coffee or over lunch. But of course, we are measuring satisfaction, but it might be that the population that we have in a conventional trial is very different than from a population that we have in a decentralized trial. So whatever we measure in satisfaction is always conditional on the participant diversity. So it might be an iterative process in which we see, because we don't know how the participant populations will differ in the end for conventional or decentralized, that we see, we might have a very different population in the decentralized arm. And this also, of course, affects satisfaction. So maybe we should then look at our study design again, or look at our recruitment again. So it will be an iterative process eventually. So this is just a start, we would like to say. But this is also something that I would like to discuss with you over coffee, if you or over lunch. So this is the Trial at Home consortium. There's lots of partners. There's only 3 of us today, but I think it already represents that we have academic partners, companies, and also patient representatives. And I think that's what we stand for. We are open for some questions. I think there's some time still. So.
Okay, there you go. On one of the previous slides, there was, the physical site, there was the remote, and then fully virtual, or I think it was the remote was the fully virtual, is that correct?
Yeah.
So is that a fully virtual site, or is it tied to a physical site with a PI?
Tied to a physical site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
The next will be the next step. Yeah.
All right, this is yeah.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. When will you have, I would say, the data to be published or presented? You may have said that at the early stage, but when are you going to release, I would say, the...
So first patient in is November. So and it's not a very long study, so we hope that next year by this time we will have some data to
Next year,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Next year somewhere. Hopefully. Okay. Many thanks.
Thank you.